Hey everybody, this is John Bailey. Welcome to Microphone Monday. Today I have a very special guest, the incredible and legendary Jack Angel. Hi Jack, how are you?
You know, you can take that legend part to a restaurant and you can, and they'll kick your ass out of there, you know.
They've somewhere in Studio City, I'm sure they have, or some the Studio City Cafe that I meet a lot of voice actors. I'm sure they have the Jack Angel sandwich or something like that.
No, no. I walk around Studio City and nobody knows who I am. In fact, there's a there's an ArcLight theater. Do you have ArcLight theaters where you are?
Not where I am, no.
You know what it is? I mean, it's a big, huge theater complex, and I got 20 different theaters in there. And uh, along the main wall, they have these panels. They're like so. And one day, they had little ads for or just panels of animated shows. And so I stopped, and I was with a group of people, and I started counting the shows that I was in, and there was like 25 different shows that I'd been in. And somebody said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm counting the shows I've been in." And I said, any other actor in the world could be standing here who's been in 25 shows and he'd be mobbed by
Yeah.
people. And nobody, I wouldn't even mobbed by the people I was with.
Well, you're famous to us, so you know. I'll go ahead and get started. This is going to be the easy question. When did you first get started, and how did that come about where you got into voice acting?
Hey, I see a picture here. Is that you with Peter Cullen?
Yes, that is.
Uh-huh. Okay. Um, when did I start voice acting?
Yes, sir.
Geez. Well, I've always been able to do funny voices. When I was a kid, my father had a grocery store in Berkeley, California. And the people that came in there was one old man who was an old Italian and he had no teeth. And this was during World War II when a lot of things went to the troops and there wasn't gum. You couldn't get gum because they sent it all overseas. And this old man would come in, hey, you got gum? No, oh, okay. And he'd leave. And I thought, what would he do if he got gum? He had no teeth. And then there was the butcher was Eddie Wong, who was Chinese, had a big Chinese accent, and I used to do imitations of him. And there was an old black wino who used to come in, and he liked muscatel, but he had a great sense of humor, and he would say, "I want me a bottle of muscatel." And so we would sell him a bottle of muscatel, and so I learned to do accents and imitations of people, and so that's when I was in my early teens. Um, and then I said to a couple of people I wanted to go to Hollywood and get in the movies and stuff. And I said it when I was getting out of high school. I said it to my girlfriend's mother, and she said, "What are you going to do with yourself now that you're getting out of school?" And I said, "I'm not going to Hollywood and be a movie star." And said, "Oh, you can't do that. That takes somebody special to do that. Get serious." And I thought, "Oh God, I better not tell anybody that." So and my thought was, who the hell are you to tell me I'm not special?
Yeah.
So then I frittered away a couple of years in college, and I joined the army during the Korean War, which was really bright, and grew up in the army, and learned really. I had to give classes, and part of the gag about doing classes is when the troops are nodding off, you tell them a joke, and they wake up. So, and I was really good at telling jokes, so I would do that, and I just got bit, and so I was sending money home to my mother to put away for me because I was going to go to the Pasadena Playhouse, which is where a lot of movie stars were born. And when I got home, I asked for the money. She said, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry, I had to spend it."
Oh,
You just killed my career, mother. But okay, well, that's plan B. So I went back to college and got got in the I guess it was the radio TV department, but it was radio and television. And so I began to experiment around with radio, and my first real job was as a disc jockey. And I was a disc jockey for 18 years, all
Wow.
coast, big time, because I was here in LA, got fired a lot. Um, well, after you've been in some business for a while, you develop a certain amount of expertise. You know how to run a radio station, for example, and when they're doing it wrong, it's okay for you to know it, but it's to tell them over and over, so they fire your ass. So I was a lot, but uh, uh, the format was the Sinatra, Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald format. Really good music. There is no there is no radio station in metropolitan Los Angeles that plays any of that music. Any of it, none of it. Well, once in a while a Sinatra pops up or Ella, but I really miss finding me on the radio. Anyway, I did that for 18 years, and finally, the last time I got fired, it was just right out of. So I started in radio in 1958, which is before anybody in the world was born, and so there were no listeners. So so uh,
Well, my dad's still older than you, so don't feel too bad.
your dad your dad is older than
Yes,
me?
he was born in 49, I believe.
No, he's not older than me.
Yeah.
I graduated from high school in '49.
Oh, okay. Well, I was trying to make you feel better.
I feel better about that. No, actually, I really do feel that because I'll be 82 in October, and most people say, 82? Oh my God, you don't look any older than
You
62.
really don't. I was kind of shocked you said that.
What, 62 is an old bastard, you know?
Hey, now my dad's not that old. He's 66 or so. He
Well,
got started really late with me. I was
I,
an accident, I've been told.
I used to be really pretty, and I'm not anymore.
You
So
still have your hair. Be glad.
I do, yeah.
You see
And
my picture.
I work out. I work out at the gym, and half the guys in there shave their heads, because their hair is diminished,
Yeah.
and they all hate me. You know, I had your hair, boy. Yeah, yeah, you had my hair. You get laid, right?
There you go. That includes my wife, by the way. I've got to wonder. So,
What includes your wife? What?
oh, the fact that I'd get laid more if I had hair.
Oh,
um,
really? Oh, you
you
poor thing.
mentioned being in the military. I'll get back to the how you got into the cartoon industry, but do you draw a lot of your because I noticed you do a lot of soldiers and a lot of captains and admirals, and I mean the first time I actually recognized your voice with your name because when I was a huge Transformers fan, that was my inspiration into getting into voiceovers in the first place, and I noticed that your name was in the credits, but it didn't have which characters you did listed by. So my brother and I used to think that you were the one who did Optimus Prime's voice, and then we bought the game Dark Forces. This is a Star Wars game, and then it had your name listed as the credits as the Admiral, and I was like, oh, now I know which characters he does. I recognize that voice. So did you draw from your military experience for those characters?
No,
Really?
no, no, no. Well, let me explain my military experience. I went to basic training, and I had gone to a couple of years of college, and was not a very good student. I mean, I figured my time away. And one of the things I had to do was make up a math course. So I revisited algebra, which nobody ever really wants to revisit,
Oh,
but I did it anyway. And when I joined, they gave you an intelligence test, and every math question was an algebraic equation. So I just zipped right through that sucker. And the rest of the stuff was, I have a fairly good memory for details. So if it was history or if it was whatever, anyway, I scored really high. And they said, "Oh, you're a bright guy. Why don't you go to officer candidate school? Why don't you go to leadership school?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." So I went through basic training and then I went to leadership school.
wow.
And they said, "Why don't you go to officer candidate school?" And I said, "Okay." And they said, "You need your birth certificate." And I didn't have it. So I had to send it away, and my mother didn't have it. So she had to send to Sacramento. And it took 6 months. So during that 6 months, I was a physical training instructor at leadership school. And that was a really cool gig because they only had about two classes going through at a time. And so I'd have to give one class in the morning and one class in the afternoon. The rest of the time was mine. So I spent most of my time at the PX listening to Earl Bostic records. And, and So anyway, finally, I went to officer candidate school at Fort Benning, Georgia, the infantry school, and graduated. Uh, then I applied for Ranger School and went to Army Ranger School for 7 and 8 weeks. 7 because I screwed up, and when they asked me why I screwed up or how I screwed up, instead of manning up, I made some lame ass excuse and they kicked me out. So even I got the training. To answer your question, no, I just have been blessed with a big voice. So when they, oh, and by the way, Wally Burr was the director of all those shows.
I've met him, yes, sir.
Wally was a tank commander in World War II, and he also taught
Oh,
tank gunnery in the Korean War. So Wally and I had that military experience. We were both officers in common. So there was a closer connection. Besides, all the Transformer voices were big voices, you know. And so when you're that, I mean, we never heard what they I never heard what they did with the voice. They would take whatever we did and run it through a synthesizer or something, and make their cartoon. And we were always working when the cartoon shows, so we never got to see them. So I have no idea. People would say, listen, in episode 18, uh, Ramjet said something. And I said, I have no idea. Because Ramjet said, I didn't even know Ramjet was a bad guy for a long time.
it's funny because when I finally got to meet Wally Bird and his wife was there, and I believe you were ill at that year. It was the BotCon 2010, 2011, and I think you were supposed to be there, but you'd gotten ill and couldn't make it. And there was a showing of the animated movie after the convention was over, and I was talking with Wally Burr and his wife afterwards, and she's like, this is the first time he's been working on this thing for on and off for 30 something years, and this is the first time I've ever actually watched something all the way through. I don't even know who's who. And I
Yeah,
had to kind of explain, okay, good guys have the red symbols and the bad guys got the purple ones. And she's like, oh, okay. I couldn't tell by their uniforms.
yeah, I didn't know, but I was 7 different ones. Uh, I was Ramjet first, and then Smokescreen, and then I went. In the movie, Robert Stack was a character in the movie.
Indeed, he was Ultra Magnus on the next edition of Unsolved Mysteries.
Right. So now, he wasn't going to do the series. So after the movie, they said, well, who sounds closest to him? And I did. So I became Ultra Magnus. And then there was, what was it?
Astro Train, of course.
Yes, Astro Train. Orson Welles did this big nasty planet, right?
Right. Unicron. That's correct.
What? Unicron?
Unicron.
And then Roger C. Carmel did Unicron in the series, but then he stuffed too much cocaine up his nose and he died.
Boy.
And they said, well, we want you to do it. Now, the sequence was that Wells had done the movie, then Wells died, then Roger died, then they said, wanted me to do that voice. And I thought, oh, shit. I'm going to die like the rest of them. But I didn't. I didn't, did I?
No, you're still here. Thank God.
Oh, okay. So I did that guy, Unicron?
Unicron. That's right.
Yeah. And I, I keep thinking Cyclonus was one that I did, but
Yes, I believe that was one of your characters.
so anyway, there were 7 altogether, and and I have no idea what most of them sounded like because I never heard them. Although somebody sent me a box which has all the episodes in it, and
Oh.
anytime I want to find out what I did, all I have to do is go listen and watch the show. But that was 1980 something.
Been a few years.
So I don't do that. But if you go to my Facebook page, my site is my page is usually inundated with people who are big Transformer fans and Voltron fans. Voltron, were you a Voltron fan
Of
too?
course, that was actually my original inspiration. Was we first got a TV before kids were completely mind wiped by them, and I was playing on the floor and I heard Peter Cullen saying Voltron, Defender of the Universe, and I turned around like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first official cartoon series.
You actually have a little bit of the Peter Cullen rasp in your voice. You kind of sound like Peter.
Appreciate
Um,
that. Thank you.
he, I was always the guy that ruled the universe. I was Hazar, and I forget. I rule the universe. You know, and you do that times, and pretty soon you go home and gargle to see if your neck leaks
Yeah.
because it brings the crap out of your throat. But anyway, so where were we? So I did a whole bunch of those. I did 7 different characters in Voltron and 7 different characters in Transformers and 3 different characters in Super Friends. I was Hawkman, the Flash, and Super Samurai. And for Super Samurai, because he had to say Japanese words, they had a Japanese artist who was over in the art department. And every time we recorded, he would come in to make sure that I said, Tome Ningen, exactly right. And, and it's whatever the other thing was. But he was always there. We wanted authenticity.
Okay, I don't want to get you too far off track again. So you were in radio for 18 years, and how did the first cartoon audition or job come about?
Well, Wally Burr at that time was working at Hanna-Barbera, and he was doing Super Friends. And they needed, they did a new show called The Challenge of the Super Friends, in which they introduced other super characters. And
And the Legion of Doom.
yeah, right. So, because I had a big voice and Wally knew me, I auditioned for him and I got those 3 roles. So then, I also did a character on, there was another rollout of the Smurfs. It was Johan and Pee Wee. And that was the original cartoon in Belgium in which the Smurfs were introduced. In America, they made Smurfs. These little people in Days of Old, when Knights were old, were walking through the forest, and all of a sudden they discovered there's these little people, but they weren't really the stars of that show in Belgium. It was a cartoon strip actually. They were just incidental characters, like the Schmoos were to Lil Abner. So, but in this country, Hanna Barbera did, the Smurfs, and so I was a character in the Smurfs spinoff. He was a nice wizard who used to play chess with Papa Smurf, and he did, oh, hello, Papa Smurf. How are all the little Smurfs? And that's pretty much all he ever said. And just recently, although Jonathan Winters was not Papa Smurf in the series, he was Grandpapa Smurf. They just did a Smurf movie,
Right. I
and
was just about to bring that up too because I saw that you were in the Smurfs Christmas Carol, which I did the campaign for the Blu-ray for that movie, and then I saw your name in the credits. I was like, well,
see,
what must
yeah,
it have been like coming back to the Smurfs after all those years?
well,
Small world.
it was weird because Jonathan was now the voice of Papa Smurf,
Right.
and so then they wanted to do that little Christmas Carol thing for the DVD. And John, I don't know whether he was sick or whether he didn't want to do it or it was unavailable, whatever the hell it was. They said, no, we can't get Jonathan. So we were having auditions, and I did my take on Jonathan. They said, oh, that's perfect. You do it. So, so I went over and did, and he didn't have a very large part in it. He's at the beginning and the end. Uh, but I got to be Papa Smurf. So that's kind of cool.
That's really that's ironic that you'd come back from you made full circle now, so all the
Yeah.
way around.
I grew
Um,
up Papa Smurf.
so what did you go about doing to prepare for either an audition or a session for an animated show?
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Well, you, what do you do? I mean,
I go through the script and try to not be nervous.
yeah,
But I was a fan of these things, so it was a job for you. So I guess it's a totally different thing for me.
earlier when I was a disc jockey, I mean, I had 18 years to get rid of all that stuff, but
Okay.
but I was a morning man a lot, which is the guy that got up and ushered in the station at 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 5.
Wow.
And so you get out of bed and all day, I'm gonna drive down to work, and you can't. You've got to do something to to generate some energy and to get the cobwebs out of your voice. So I would just read billboards on the way to work, and out loud, and and sort of vocalize in the car as I was going to the radio station. And so by the time I got there, I was up, I was ready, and I'd go on the air, and people would say, "How can you be so alive and so bright at this hour in the morning?" Well, first off, because it was my job, and I loved it. I mean, can I? Have you ever been a disc jockey?
No, I have. I've never really gotten into radio other than commercials.
Well, it was. I I loved it. You had a show. You were back then. It was a very big time because television was small time in those days. Television didn't really become a great monster that it is. Just about 1958. Just about then it began to. There was a Sam Spiegel, I think is what his name was, and he created the Sam Spiegel Spectacular. And nobody had ever seen a great show like that on television before. And all of a sudden, people began to then flock toward television. But prior to that, it was a dreadful, dreary thing. So radio was the dominant uh, entertainment, and everybody had a radio in their car. Uh, so my hero was a guy out of San Francisco named Don Sherwood, and he was a jokester. He did funny voices, and so that's what I wanted to be. So when I broke into radio, I was a jokester and I did funny voices, and I played the kind of music that I liked, believing that enough people were out there who also would like that kind of music and they would have great ratings, which happened pretty much that way. And I would do funny voices. I would tell jokes. I would joke to real people, people not in the business. Yeah, I have to work 3 hours straight through with no lunch. Oh, it's so grueling. And I do pull-ups with my tongue to exercise, stupid stuff like that. But but ultimately, over time, uh, I got through all the nervousness. One of the things that happened when I got to LA was I began to audition against people like Pat Harrington and uh, Bernie Coppell, and just a lot of guys who were already famous. And I knew what they did. And I'd be in the waiting room, and they'd all be schmoozing with one another and one-upping one another. And I would sit there and just be very quiet because I was the enigma. They didn't know what I did. And
Right.
I, and I knew what I did, and I knew that on my worst day, I did more stuff than they did. So it never occurred to me to be nervous about it, you know.
Yeah. Did were many of the shows I've heard others like Peter Cullen and Neil Ross and others say that they got a chance to, for some shows if they were lucky they got a chance to look at the pictures of the characters before they chose the ones that they wanted to audition for the voices for.
Yeah.
Where did you pull these voices from? You know, you'd mentioned doing impressions of people that you knew in your childhood. Did these characters come from somewhere, or you just kind of create the character on the spot, or how did that come about?
Well, most of the time, on the Voltron and the Transformer voices, they they would say this is a big guy, and don't worry about we're gonna synthesize it. So just be big and or he's mean or whatever the hell it is. So how many big mean voices do you have?
Yeah.
So you have to trust that they know what they're doing with the thing. And well, let's go back to Super Friends. I had Hawkman and the Flash. Well, they really were pretty much my own voices, except that Hawkman was, I've got to save Wonder Woman before it's too late. And the Flash is, I've got to find Superman before it's too late. So there were 2 degrees of my voice. And then Super Samurai was with the rasp, with, oh, yes, he didn't have a real big Japanese accent, but because they said, no, don't do an accent. Just just don't do contractions. So he was, I cannot stand here and wait for Superman, instead of I can't, yeah, I cannot. And that made it sound a little foreign. So one of the,
That's very interesting. Now that people are starting to notice the voices behind the characters, and the kids that loved these shows growing up, they're adults now. When was the point that you realized that you were well known and that you were famous in certain circles and that people knew who you were? Was it at a convention or just on the street somewhere? Or
I've never been to the first convention I ever went to. I just went to Comic-Con, and I was invited and was going to be paid rather handsomely to go to that one that I was sick, and I didn't get to go. It pissed me off because I wanted to go.
hey, we all missed you, by the way.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. We understand.
But I've never been invited to those things, and finally in Comic-Con, the guy that was, they had a dais and they had like 6 or 7 voice actors, and they've been doing this for years, and have them up there and they talk about what they're doing and what they did and who they were and who they are, and nobody ever asked me to do it. And he called my agent and he said, well, we're looking for a couple of voices, and how about Jack Angel? He said, oh, okay, yeah, sure, Jack, great. So I went down and was on the dais. Now, let me tell you a story. Uh, we all know who Samuel L. Jackson is,
Indeed, we do.
wonderful actor. I was, oh God, who's the character he's doing with the patch on his eye?
Nick Fury and the Avengers show.
I used to be Nick Fury,
Ah,
a cartoon, years ago in the 80s. Okay. Now, there's a website that is called By the Numbers, and this website has figured out how much money each movie has made and who was in it. So now I've been in a lot of Disney movies, and they all make over $100 million. So in the category of $100 million movies, uh, I for a while was number 4. Frank Welker did
always number one.
is number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2 was Tom Cruise. Number 3 was Tom Hanks, and I was number 4. And then all of a sudden, I got Eddie Murphy passed me because he was doing the ogre thing, uh, and
Shrek.
Shrek. Yeah, did a couple of Shreks, and so he jumped ahead of me, and then I did a couple of more things and jumped ahead of him, and then I was number 5. Oh yeah, Samuel L. Jackson passed me, and I thought, oh, okay, well that's good. And then he went on Howard Stern's radio show, and he made reference to this website. And he said, yeah. I said, so in the $100 million movie category, I'm number 4. And Stern said, well, who's Frank Welker and Jack Angel? And he said, oh, they aren't real actors. They're voiceover actors. And so at Comic-Con, I told that story, and I said, and so now I'd like to take this moment to challenge Samuel L. Jackson to a voice-off, to an actor-off with Frank Welker and you and me. We'll go to a studio and we'll see who the real actors are. But he hasn't called.
You actually bring up a very valid point that I've discussed with Michael Bell and others before. What is your opinion on why the especially like DreamWorks and these other the big, especially in movies, not so much in cartoons, but in movies where they
Know what you're going to ask.
you know what I'm going to ask beforehand.
Because Jeffrey Katzenberg, DreamWorks, believes that people who are stars for a reason. He doesn't know what that reason is, but there's a reason they're stars. And so I'm going to use that. I think if you choose Eddie Murphy, how can you go wrong?
Right.
I mean, the right character is Eddie Murphy. But does anybody know who the voice of Shrek really is unless you tell them?
Especially not children, no.
No, they don't know. Uh, but Katzenberg thinks that it takes a star to be the voices of all of his characters, and so then others think, oh, we gotta hire stars, and it's like when they did Toy Story 1, Tom Hanks and what's his name?
Tim Allen.
Tim Allen. Tim was a stand-up comic yet to have a series. Tom Hanks was yet to win an Academy Award. He had his own series, obviously, and was in a couple of not very good movies. So those guys were hired to do those two characters, in Toy Story 1. It took 3 years for Toy Story 1 to finally be animated and hit the screen. In that 3 years, both of those guys, I mean, Tim Allen became a major star in television,
Right.
and Hanks began to win Academy Awards all over the place. So now when this thing comes out, they've got two. They got an Emmy Award winning star as one guy and an Academy Award winning star in the other. They lucked out.
Yeah. Now,
And
I've noticed though in Pixar movies, they do a better job. They don't just cast them because they're celebrities. At least it seems that way. And you've worked on quite a few Pixar films. Is
yeah,
it better with Pixar than it is with? I mean, obviously it's better than with DreamWorks as far as casting goes. But I mean, is it more based on the actual talent of the actor rather than just their celebrity status?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I believe that makes for a better film as well.
Well, I don't want to badmouth any actors,
Right.
celebrities or not. Um, and there's nothing wrong with what they do. But I think the idea that a trained voice actor is not going to be as good as a trained actor is a lot of bullshit. You know,
Yeah.
uh, but Katzenberg believes that, and he runs DreamWorks, and that's fine.
That's just the way it is.
But
um,
his partner, Steven Spielberg, hired me to be the voice of Teddy in AI, artificial intelligence.
huh, that's
Did you
cool.
see that movie?
I did. It's been a while though, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen that film.
Yeah. Well, I was the voice of Teddy, and I wasn't the star. But I
You
was.
your voice of credits, they are astonishing to say the least. I got to ask real quick before I've got to go get my kids from school, so I'll try to wrap this up quickly. Was there a big difference? But I mentioned earlier that with the first time I really put the voice with the name was in the game Dark Forces. Has You've done quite a bit of video game work as well. Is there a big difference when you do video game jobs as opposed to being in a studio with the other actors doing an animated show?
Well, yeah. If you're there's two different ways to do it. What Voltron was already animated, so and it was Japanese. So the company that bought those two films rewrote the dialogue for English, and we went in and we did 125 episodes in 6 months.
Wow.
We wild tracked. They had to understand. They had to know whether he's yelling or whether he's quiet or subdued or whatever it was. They had to know because we didn't know. We just saw the lines, and they said this line is "I rule the universe." I rule the universe. No, bigger. I rule the universe. Faster. I rule the universe. Slower. I rule the universe. So get into whatever frame. They move on to the next line. Um, we never saw the characters. I was Hazar and what the hell was the other one? Purple got blue.
I forget, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah. Um, anyway, they had to know. Now, so that was we did all of those episodes alone in a booth with a director and a tech. All of the Transformers, we had a whole room full of guys, all of whom, by the way, every single one of them was, in addition to being a voiceover artist, was also an artist, and they'd sit there and doodle.
Oh.
And it was amazing to see the different styles of doodling, but they all did it, including
I,
me.
I I always ask this question with anybody who's worked with Frank Welker on any show and all. Did he try to prank you or anyone else while you were working on a session? I've heard he's infamous for being the class clown.
What Frank did at Wally Bird's studio, there was a sliding door that came into where we all sat, and it had a distinctive noise, whatever it was. And so Frank would just do, everybody looked at the door. Nobody there. He did that a lot.
It seems like working in studio with a group of actors that there's a lot more chemistry. It's like it becomes a family rather than just a job, and you work with these guys every day,
Yeah.
and you kind of play off each other. Is it like that with video games at all? Because I hear a lot more that they're recording video games separately and then piecing them back together later
They
on.
are. They do. Yeah. I just did 3 days on a new video game and uh, Call of Duty thing. And so I was, I just, they just, here was the line. do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. And so 3 days of that, and they'll piece it together and it'll work.
Is it has it changed a lot? Because I've heard that they Michael Bell mentioned this, that they fought for sessions to put the screaming and yelling at the end because they know that that can put a voice actor out of work for a few days.
Yeah, well,
Back in the old days, that I've heard horror stories about people coughing up blood and just being overworked and their voices being really, really strained. I don't know if that's true or if that's just a rumor.
well, that's why I say you go home and gargle to see if your neck leaks. It doesn't when a simple thing like the Hunchback of Notre Dame we did at Disney, and there's a segment in there where Paris is on fire, the city is,
Right.
and so we did 2 days of screaming. Oh, when you go in there and you scream for hours, it really, I mean, all of a sudden you get this crap in your throat and it won't come out. you can you can do this and you keep doing it. And I think the one that started killing me was I did the voice of the gourd head minister in Beetlejuice. Do you take this woman to be your so, and I had to do that over and over and over, louder, and louder is harder because you have
Yeah.
the vocal cords. And I remember when I was a young guy, came to town, and all these older guys, they wouldn't do shit like that. They said, "No, I'm not gonna do that." And I'd say, "Well, you pussy," and I'd go. If they say it's really stressful, I don't even want to do it.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it to me to go in there and do 4 hours at a time, 3 days of that stuff. This wasn't quite that stressful, but it was still pretty stressful.
Yeah, I can understand. I've got two quick questions last, and the first would be: you have any plans for any conventions coming up? Because I know that they're starting to invite you more now, and I have a lot of fans that are huge fans of you in particular and the characters that you've created, and I know they would love to know where you're going to be or if you're going to be at a certain place. Maybe probably next year, I would
I,
assume, because the
I
convention
have I
seasons.
have no I have no plans to go. I haven't been invited to any, and it depends on where it is. Um, I mean, I might go, uh, and I might not. If they invite me and they offer me money, I might be more inclined to go. Uh, I mean, I just to go to Pasadena, they offered me a nice chunk of change, and I was thrilled to do it. But I'm not going to fly across country and on my dime and put myself up in a hotel on my dime,
Yeah.
go do signatures and all that crap. Uh, for what? Uh, unless, oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, my computer just decided to go dark. Uh, I'm selling books. Do you know anything about my
Yeah, that was
books?
going to be my next question. Was going to be to plug your book. So
Yeah. Well, they were one of the things about going to Comic Con. They said you can plug your books, and I said great. And at the last minute, they said, "Oh, we're sorry, we run out of time, and we've got to go." And nobody got a chance to plug anything, and that was the only reason I went because I wanted to plug books.
well, I have over 11,000 subscribers, and I have a lot of Transformers and Voltron fans. So I guarantee you, people will know about the book with this video. I promise.
Well, if anybody wants to get into voiceovers or acting, or actually, truthfully, anything, uh, the how to succeed in voiceovers without ever losing is really a metaphor for how to succeed in any business. You just have to change the labels. And and the I mean it's a short book. It's less than $10, and it really dispels a whole lot of craziness of the way the business works because people give you false information and people run around saying all kinds of crazy stuff that's not true.
Yeah.
And after I've been in it for a long time and I realized they're lying to these young kids. The other thing is the other one is the Book of Jack, and that's the autobiography, and that has a lot of crazy, wacky stuff in it. So it's and the people who have read it have said, "Oh my God, what a great book!" So, if uh, if people want to buy it, all I have to do is go to jackangel.com, and if they buy it from me on my website, of course they get an autograph. And so,
That's great, and I really do compliment you on doing something like that. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us and all the information, the great stories, and hope when I move out there, I hope you'll at least let me take you out to coffee or dinner or something to show my
well,
appreciation. Thank you so much. But anyways, I sincerely appreciate it. It was a real honor to talk with you, Jack. I appreciate it so much.
el gusto es mío.
I don't understand Spanish.
that that means that the gusto was mine.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really do hope that you're able to make it to another Transformers convention. We were all, I mean, I wished you could have seen the reaction of the audience whenever they said that Jack Angel couldn't be here. He was ill, so he had to cancel. The whole crowd just was just brokenhearted over it.
Well, I'm sorry too. I really did truly want to be there, and I was so pissed. I don't ever get sick. I never get sick. I work out. I take pills. I eat right. I get laid regularly. Uh,
Good for you. I
yeah.
don't even get that.
Well, as I pointed out in my books, life is a game. There's pretty good evidence that all of this is just a big illusion, and it's all a game. Well, games were created to have fun in. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.